Welcome to this workshop of the Hopkins School Board. We have 2 agenda items this evening. We'll be starting out with our board goal setting conversation and then moving into a student board representative program update. We are thrilled to have one of our student board reps at the table tonight. Oscar, it's really good to see you.
Good to be back.
Thank you for being here, and we welcome your input during our board goal setting conversation because we know that we need to work with our student board representatives to achieve all of our collective goals for the district, and we want to make sure that when we're setting our goals as a board, around what's in our purview, that we're working closely with our district leadership team and with our student board reps to ensure that we're all moving in the same direction. So the school board met last week for what in the past we've called a retreat. This year we decided to call it a grounding. And there's a bit of a philosophical conversation around that the word retreat kind of has this connotation of moving backward, and that we really wanted to center ourselves in the present moment and get grounded before we move into the hard work ahead this school year. I unfortunately was attending to a family emergency and was not able to make it to the grounding. So I'm going to be, I helped plan the grounding, and I know what was supposed to happen at the grounding, and it sounds like it was a really wonderful conversation, and I'm so sorry to have missed it. And I will be relying heavily on my board colleagues during this conversation so that you can share what you talked about at the grounding and how that might inform our board goal formation. So we'll be using a process that our district leadership team used to set their goals for this year under 3 broad categories. The first one being teaching and learning, the second, school and district culture, and the third, operations. We will also be taking a look at our board goals from last year, specifically the reflection that we did last May at the end of the school year to kind of assess how far along we got in our goals and what work we might need to carry forward into this year. So I have notes from that conversation as well. And I think the goal for tonight would be to identify the major areas we want to work on. If we have the time, we can drill deeper down and get some of those bullet points identified. Last year, the format that we used was like key actions. So what are we going to do? And then measurable impact. How are we going to measure our progress toward this goal area? So if that feels like a useful way to organize the information, we can absolutely do that again this year. I have held space during our next board workshop for a continued board goal setting conversation if we need that. So I don't want the board to feel pressure tonight, like we have to do it all, we have to finish the entire conversation, because sometimes it actually is helpful to take a little space and reflect on the previous conversation and then bring more information and ideas back to the table. So with that, I'll just share some of our notes that we took together at the end of last school year about those goals. We were looking at creating a student board rep goal area, specifically aligning with our board reps and the work that you want to do, focusing on how we can support you as a school board in that work. Policy goal area, budget goal area. These are no big surprises because those are 2 of our major areas of responsibility and influence as a school board, and then a board professional development goal area. So wondering if those kind of major themes still resonate with the board, and if there are some other kind of major areas, perhaps from the grounding conversation that you wanted to bring in.
Run those by me again.
Sure, yeah, a student board rep goal a policy goal, a budget goal, and a board professional development goal.
I guess I'm not positive how this would look yet, as we're just kind of exploring this at the beginning of the year, but to harp on my kind of community and community engagement and community communication is a potential interest of mine, but I don't have specifics prepared with me today on precisely what that might look like.
How we approached that last year was embedding community engagement and communication within each goal area.
Sure.
So I don't know if that feels like a useful way to move forward this year, or if we wanted to have a separate goal area that really attends to that in a specific way, so we can think about how to structure that too.
Certainly.
I think we've kind of given ourselves short shrift on development, board development over the last few years because of the COVID situation. And I'd like to see us pick up a little more momentum in that area.
Great. So a specific goal area around board professional development.
Right.
Seems appropriate there.
Are we talking about specifics right now, or are we talking big picture? Like, do we want another category, or?
Yeah, if you have another category, I think now would be the time to kind of identify the buckets, and then we can talk about what could go in each of them.
I don't have anything.
Oh, okay.
Do you have another big bucket in mind?
We don't.
Oh, okay.
I mean, at this point, we have 5 buckets, so.
Right. I think, like, one of the things that we talked about was the simplification of the goal-setting template that the administration was using, and the simplification into 3 buckets. And I think that made everybody feel really good in their hearts and in their brains. And I would look to perhaps come up with goals that aligned with those 3 buckets of teaching and learning operations in school district and culture. And maybe they're a bit more broad than we had before, you know, with more actionable items, but I think in keeping with that framework makes a lot of sense for us. So I'd rather see us kind of really bring it down to 3 goals.
Yes, and the way we've approached this in the past, so in the past there were 6 areas, is that right? And so we identified kind of, you know, categories that align with our board responsibilities, so like policy, budget, professional development, and then we identified, you know, using the past categories, is this an equity leadership goal, is this an operational leadership? So I think now that we have the 3 bigger bucket goal areas, still aligning to those makes a lot of sense. So those big categories are teaching and learning, school district and culture, and operations.
Can I make a suggestion?
That would be great.
So I remember we used to have board members kind of like paired with schools. And for school and district culture, it would be, if board members have time, it would be nice to maybe schedule a couple visits each month where you're in our schools and getting, you know, we've hired nearly 100 new teachers this year, so meet new teachers, or even, you know, partner up with me or with our principal and visit classrooms.
I would love that.
Yeah, I think that would be great. Oh, what'd you say?
I just said, can I have Gateway?
Okay.
That sounds great, and that fits into that school district and culture category. And then that can be a specific goal area, and then we can have our bullet points, you know, underneath, so that we can measure progress toward that.
Yeah.
I just realized, because you're already at Gatewood.
Right.
I'm like, what's the Gatewood? Oh.
I've got my Gateway Gator shirt.
How does that feel as one of our goal areas.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think we can even make it as much like a community presence, right? So like when you talk about like engagement or whatever, that one piece of that can be the school district, right? So maybe that's even like broader, right? Community presence or, because it's been hard, I think, since we came on the board, like for 2 years, we weren't even allowed in the buildings.
Right.
Right? So like,
Right.
I feel like that's been a huge piece of what's been missing for us.
Totally.
So, and even, the ability to be like in the district offices, which we've not, other than this, right? But yeah, there's a lot along those lines that I think could be really interesting. And more engagement sessions, which we did quite a few last year, but.
Yeah, I would also just, under that, I think community ed, it would be great if someone was assigned to community ed, because that's an important piece of what we do in the district.
Yeah, I like this idea of expanding it out to community presence. Then we can include some of the work that Rachel's been doing around community engagement and communication within that goal area too. So my notes so far are under school district and culture, community presence, and then subcategories, board members paired with schools, engagement sessions, community ed. What else do we think belongs under that?
I think a big piece of culture is, and this might be a really good way of aligning some professional development for the board, is learning things like restorative practices that we've been doing, our equity work. I found a lot of value in reading the book that we read for our grounding session and being able to speak with our APEC members more in depth. So yeah, pieces of that, like work that is directly impacting how kids experience classrooms and education in Hopkins.
Yeah, I think that goes back to as well that session that we did where we dipped our toes in the restorative culture. And I think all of us agreed, wanted more of that.
Yeah.
Great. So I'm looking at two of these categories we're trying to align with. So we have school district and culture, and I think all of this definitely contributes to culture. We also have of learning and teaching, and I'm thinking about our learning as a board. Might we do like a board professional development category under learning and teaching, and then go into these things that we need to learn as a board in order to understand what's happening culturally in our schools? Does that make sense for kind of how to think about it? Okay.
And I would love to dig in more to, I think it was Fonda that mentioned in our grounding session. Mentioned, that there was maybe a bit of a misstart on how we launched the wellness centers in the high schools and the junior highs due to lack of student input. I would love more continued information, involvement, visits from what we're doing in an SEL perspective across all of our different age groups. So it sounds like there's that new curriculum too that she mentioned, and deep diving in that, I think, would be really interesting for us.
Excellent.
Yeah, and
Sure.
I think mental health is a huge piece where I think the board can have a better understanding of what the reality is. Yeah, and just really important right now for our youth.
Dr. Mary Perry Reed, do we do that, and I might be using the wrong word for it, but I think it's the panorama survey? Is that kind of the student check-in that we do, and do we do it every other year?
Every year.
Every year, okay.
Yes.
Did we see those results last year?
I don't know, probably maybe not as a specific topic,
Okay.
but some of the results have been infused into other reports.
Into other things?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I just think that, because that really takes into account their emotional well-being
Yes.
and feelings of safety and security,
Yes.
right? I would love
Yes.
maybe a deeper dive on those results and what we've seen shift since, 2020.
We also received the Minnesota Student Survey results, which is the statewide assessment given every 3 years. I think grades 5, 8, and 11, I feel like, I'm not sure. So I was thinking about how we leverage workshop time, and maybe it's like a twofer, like it's a deeper dive into some of these topics that you want to build your knowledge about and be more closely informed around. And because it's a deeper dive, it's like a PD, you're learning about restorative culture practices or our student survey results, whether it's Minnesota Student Survey or Panorama, things like that.
Yeah.
That sounds fantastic. And then we're learning along with our community too, because
Right.
it's happening in a workshop format. Yep, I really like that.
So, yeah, I'm someone who misses being in college. So, like, so one of the things that I think is really helpful would be if we could get materials or an article or a thought-provoking read or something, podcast, whatever, before we go into kind of a deeper dive discussion. I always find that helpful because you walk into the workshop and you're already prepared to speak about certain things, or you feel like you have a background, at least a high-level one in it. Like I'm just thinking about mental health. I just listened to a really great report about how that has shifted for youth and the ways in which they found that you can have a big impact on outcomes.
That's really easy, we can do that.
Yeah, and I think
great.
too, I mean, not to simplify it, but even like a book club type mentality, right? Like, I think we all took so much from that American Indian book, and then, where we could sit and discuss that in order to trigger further discussion. And even if it's not, I mean, all the onus being on administration to get us that content, like, we could be providing that content too, because as I know about you and you know about me, we've got a podcast problem.
Is it a problem, though?
Is it? No.
You listen to too many or what?
Yeah,
Been in your library?
I do a lot of podcast listening.
I agree. It helps me come prepared to really ask questions and to think about a topic if we have a remote common grounding in that topic before we do a deeper dive.
Do we have any qualitative details of what the community is looking for the board to get a better grasp on? I mean, I understand where everybody's going, but I'm just curious about whether or not, is there anything that the community or the staff or the students, are looking for the board to, I mean, I'm not going to understand every single detail, but something that, because I mean, I could show up in a school, once a month, but is there something that I should be taking away that the staff is looking for, the students are looking for, or whoever's, stakeholders at large are looking for the board to understand, or board members, I mean, to understand?
I think that's a really important question. And as you were asking it, I was thinking about this idea of pairing up with schools again and having board members going into schools, really listening. A way that I've approached this in the past is when I'm at a community event or I'm talking with students or I'm in a school, I'm like listening for themes, and then trying to sort of map that out, like, oh, I heard a similar thing from this staff member at West, right? Oh, I wonder, is this a culture thing? Is this an operations thing? So kind of thinking in those ways. So like doing that work of showing up in community and listening and bringing those things forward, I think that can help to inform the PD that we need, right? Like, I mean, I think all of the ideas that we have here around restorative practices, you know, I know from being a parent in the district that my kid has benefited from restorative practices. And so, like, yeah, I'm curious. I want to learn more about how that works, right? You know, equity, broadly speaking, of course, the wellness piece. So I think that our list of PD topics can continue to evolve, informed by that engagement piece.
Sure.
And
What
Jason,
What would board members pairing up with schools entail? Like, how do we go about doing that? What's the goal with that?
just to keep our finger on the pulse of what's going on in the district, I
Do you
think.
speak with people from school then, or is that more students, teachers, staff? How do you go about doing that?
When I've done it in the past, I just show up, and usually unannounced. I don't know how the principals feel about that, but just walk through the building and observe what's going on. If you run into staff, ask them questions. Meet with the principal, ask them questions.
Kind of get a feel for what's going on?
Yeah, they'll tell you, believe me. Jason, if you're worried about finding out, you know, what's on their mind, don't worry about it. They'll tell you, so.
And
But
can
they-
I
the
add to
visits
that?
can-
Oh,
oh.
sorry, you go ahead.
I was just going to say the visits can be structured in many ways. Do you have ideas about how they might be structured?
I don't think I have a particular idea about that. I was just wondering if it's more you're connecting with students on that, or if you're just speaking directly to teachers, staff, things like that, because obviously it's kind of a different perspective when you
Yeah.
go to different groups of people.
And it should be both if
Yes,
possible.
definitely. I think it should involve both.
And if I could add to that, like, for example, in the summer, I did a little volunteer work with, at Gatewood and their outdoor immersion program with some of the animals, just, you know,
Right.
seeing how the staff is interacting with this new initiative of adding goats and chickens to the program. I mean, you get a real feel of what's happening inside
school.
the schools. Otherwise, you know, we're sitting here and we really aren't experiencing everything firsthand. We get all third-hand type of, you know, things told to us through emails or whatever. But when we're actually there and in there, you know, that helps us get a good view as to what's happening.
What your question makes me think about is intentionality, right? Like knowing why we're doing this and then thinking about who do we need to connect with in these buildings and what do those processes look like too, you know? Working with administrators so that, you know, they know we're coming, that sometimes there's an event, you know, like I'm thinking the community projects for IB, for example, you know, we've been invited to go experience those. That's a very different format than like participating in a circle conversation with students at the high school. So I like your question because I think it probes and like encourages us to think really intentionally about how we're gonna approach that.
About the structure of the visits, I don't think it's totally crazy, in addition to having unannounced visits, because those are valuable to see what's actually happening, but letting students know occasionally that, hey, on this day, a board member is going to be at your school. If you have something you want to tell them, now's the time to do it. Because the number of times when I've been told by someone, you should tell the board this, bring this up with the board. Well, you can do that too. I don't know that students realize they can come to meetings. And I don't know, even if we start telling them that they can come to meetings, I don't know how many actually will. But if they're told that there's a member of the board at their school and all they have to do is come over here and you can tell them exactly what you want, I think there will probably be some people who will actually share their opinions that otherwise wouldn't get heard.
And just add on to that, I think a big part of that is integrating like the student board representatives even more into our school, making it known that they exist, what our purpose is for, that you can come to us, because I mean, I'm sure many people are aware of, for example, student council, but may not be aware of student board and what they do and how they differ from student council and how you're able to reach out to them, even come to the meetings and share your opinion. So I think that's a big thing.
That's good.
I think just to add on to what Isabel and Oscar have already said, I think that there's kind of a understanding in the student body as of now that student council and student board are more or less the same thing. And I think, obviously that's not true. So I think having a way to kind of publicly, either through like social media or through like a class by class basis, kind of making that known in a broader sense and kind of really differentiating the two would be very helpful.
Well, how would you do that? Is that our responsibility or is that your responsibility?
I know earlier we kind of, as a group, talked about like setting up social media platforms for the student body to kind of interact with that way. And we, whether it was at a board level or a kind of principal level, that didn't end up happening. And so this year, I think all of us kind of have that goal to really publicize it.
Yeah, to add on to Grace, also, something I wanted to bring up was we're focusing on something the SBR program is focusing on is creating an Instagram account specifically, because, for example, I believe Student Council has an Instagram account, and that's a great way for students with, obviously, most students have social media. They're able to then go to that page, kind of figure out what we're doing. Like, we can start posting the kinds of stuff we talk about at meetings, and then even through there, create some kind of outreach or some kind of maybe like questioning or stuff that they can submit, so they can submit concerns, things like that, things they maybe don't even want to bring in person. Maybe they don't want to attend the meeting, but they have something concerning worth talking about. So just, we are currently focusing on making an Instagram account, and I'm taking part in doing that right now.
We'll also make sure that we'll be getting on announcements, and we'll have a booth at the club fair, stuff like that,
Sure
just to
will.
get our name out.
Absolutely.
That's excellent.
These are great ideas, and I'm thinking about how we can partner with you. So Oscar, for example, saying like a school board member is going to be here from this time to this time, partnering with you as student board reps so that you can get the word out, so that we can be there, together to hear this information. Because I think for me, I'm just speaking for myself, it would be so helpful to have an SBR there with me, so that we could kind of debrief after. You could help me contextualize some things. I could be like, this is the first time I'm hearing about this. What more can you tell me about it? Who else do we need to talk to? How can we dig deeper, right? And I think that we could put a SBR board collaborative goal kind of under this category of community presence, which is under school district and culture. How does that feel to you? I realize you are 3 of a cohort of 9, and so I'm not asking you to speak for all SBRs, but how does that feel for the 3 of you?
I love that idea personally. Also, I just want to add, we currently have 5 members right now, and then part of that, so we have 3 seniors and 2 juniors, and part of that right now is we're actually focusing on recruiting sophomores, because obviously that's a very important part, having sophomore representatives, and we're kind of planning to use the same format that was used before in getting people to apply, and part of that, getting people to apply, we can do that even through Instagram. When we make our Instagram account, we can make it known, applications are open, hey, you guys can apply if you know anybody who might be willing to help us, things like that. But part of that is also just making sure like all of our community is represented then, because currently we don't have any sophomore representatives.
Fantastic, thank you.
Leaders.
Right, I know. I'm so glad you're here.
Yeah.
Really happy to be here.
So we have, all right, just a recap of where we are right now. So we've got under teaching and learning, we have our board PD. Initial ideas are around restorative practices, equity, wellness, mental health, SEL, and then student survey results. Of course, these will keep adding to this list as we are working on our next goal we've identified, which is community presence, because we're going to be learning a lot more about where we need PD. So then under school district and culture, we have our community presence goal, which includes board members paired with schools, engagement sessions, community ed, and student board rep collaboration. And then kind of the third broad category is operations. And I'm thinking about this, I mean, obviously there are district operations, which that's what Dr. Mary Puri Reed is in charge of. I'm thinking about this too as board operations. So we have, committees, that's how we operate. One of those committees is policy and monitoring. Does it make sense to put policy goals under operations? Because the policies that the board sets also influence district-wide operations. So trying to think through that. Also, we need some sort of budget goal. So wondering where we might want to categorize a policy goal and a budget goal.
So we've had a budget goal. I mean, this would be the 4th year, I think. I remember the first one, we worked a lot with Chris. So,
Right.
it was, we're talking a while.
Oh, yeah.
And it's always been towards right-sizing our budget, which I really feel like we've, thanks to Torero, have, really done. So when you say a budget goal, I guess I'd be curious, if, beyond right-sizing, what your thoughts would be on that.
So I think, it's helpful for our community because our board goals are published on the board website and, our major areas that we work on are policy and budget. I think it's helpful just for community understanding of what we do to have goal areas around that. And it's work that we know we need to do anyways. And if we can be intentional in tying it to a goal, I think that can be helpful too. And I hear what you're saying,
Yeah.
we had a heavy lift that needed to be done over a period of several years, and we're past that period. So now, kind of, what does that look like?
I'm wondering if it's something around the lines of fiscal transparency. Because we have worked really hard while right-sizing the budget to communicate with our constituents around our constraints. But has it been as transparent? No. I think we have tried. But I don't know that we've executed there as well as we've executed on the actual alignment of our budget. So maybe it's fiscal transparency, maybe it's even as broad as operational transparency, especially if we're going to be trying to have more of a presence and if we're in school buildings, because I know a lot of times even teachers struggle with that, the why of the budget. So
That's a good point, Katie, because there's some members of our staff and parents as well and students who don't understand that a lot of our budgeting is earmarked for certain programs. And then, I've had staff come to me and say, well, why don't we have a budget for this? We have enough money in this account, don't we? And I was like, well, it can't transfer over, or it's earmarked and we can only use it for this thing. So there are a lot of people who don't know about that. So it would be for transparency's sake, it would be good to, be very clear about that.
Yeah, I was going to add, I think that's a really good point because I learned all about school finance serving on the LAC, and it's complicated and confusing. And I also think one of the things that I would like to be much more intentional about communicating with our community is the ways in which school districts are forced to rely on unstable funding streams, such as grants, and being really transparent with our community about what that looks like for our district. Tying, mental health in the schools is a grant program. We're lucky we keep getting the grants, but that creates a lot of work. And also, it could go away at any time. So just, I think, being really intentional about how we communicate how schools are funded.
Yeah, and then thinking about coming out of COVID or late-stage pandemic or whatever we're calling this period, the impact of ESSER funding. Those were one-time funds, and we always considered them that and talked about them that way, but, what was funded through ESSER that we no longer have funding for, or how have we found other funding streams to continue those things that we started with ESSER dollars? So I'm taking notes and putting down community education and engagement around budgeting, instability of funding streams, impacts of one-time funding, that type of thing. I like the idea of having a goal area that's specific to fiscal transparency, because I think that there's enough there.
Well, I think you can tie right in, you can say fiscal transparency, but also fiscal literacy, right? Like, you could tie those two together because they're inseparable, right? So being
Yeah.
transparent about which funds are one-time and which ones are ongoing is just a part of being transparent.
Yeah, that's great. Monitoring committee, what are you working on? What are you thinking
We're
about?
not going to be held accountable for anything.
You're not, so we're just not gonna,
We're not going to embed a goal.
okay, got it.
We're just throwing in the towel this year.
Try and figure out what we're doing.
Just guess. What,
Actually, one of the things I would really like to be, to have as part of our board goals around this area is being, again, I think transparent, much more transparent about the ways in which we're using our new equity lens tool, and how we go through the process of running all of our policies through that, and what does that look like?
so I have policy transparency and understanding that matches our fiscal transparency and understanding. Are there some big policies that you're working on this year that would make sense to put in that category as well?
Well, we're going to be working on the student conduct policy. We wrapped up the work with MDE and that cohort. So that's should be something that we have this year. And then also, there's been some discussion in the monitoring committee, I don't know if a lot, but around what is our next protected group under policy 102. And I think that could be something the committee could commit to working on.
And just like our PD topic list, this list can evolve too as the monitoring committee identifies more work that needs to be done. And as we're engaging in our schools and talking with students and learning about the impact of policy on your lived experiences, what we might need to be attending to in the monitoring committee and as a board.
And I would love to have a student rep again. Awesome. That was invaluable, having student voice right there in the committee. Yeah, it was fantastic.
Especially, I mean, every policy, I think it's really important, but particularly as we tackle this conduct policy, I think, yes.
If I could add, I had meetings with pretty much everyone here regarding our SBR group, and sometimes the committees haven't been clear with our SBRs regarding what dates and what times they're going to be meeting. Also, it would be good to take down everyone's names who want to serve on these committees. Yeah, if there could be a clear.
Student board reps, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
student board reps.
Yeah, I would definitely like to add to that too. Another thing I just want to bring up, as Tanya was mentioning, is just the committees and getting student board reps more involved. I was kind of introduced to committees when I had joined in 10th grade, as I'm now a 12th grader. And we kind of brought up the idea and signed up for committees we were maybe interested in, but there wasn't really anything more than that. There wasn't really a specification of dates and times or, when we should be attending, how we should go about doing that. And I would just love to get into contact with you guys more about that and just talk about having SBRs attend meetings. I'm sure would also help build relationships even with you guys between the SBRs and board members, and that's something we're really interested in as SBRs.
Excellent.
And as for specifically the Policy and Monitoring Committee, as of now, I'm planning on joining that one, so.
Yay, be careful what you wish for.
Who wants to learn more about school finance?
Oh, yay. We have takers.
Yeah, because there's the committee, yeah.
So Director Khan, we can work on creating that document of the meeting times, the committee meeting times, and then sharing
And
that.
who is going to be on it. Yeah.
Right, yeah, and who, I think it could be helpful too to have a board contact and a staff contact for each of those committees.
Yeah.
So you know who to get in touch with, if there are questions as you move into that work. So we can work on that. Great. So at this point, we have 4 goals that feel pretty robust, which is great. 1 under teaching and learning, which is the board PD. 1 under school district and culture, which is community presence. 2 under operations, fiscal transparency and understanding, and policy transparency and understanding. How does this feel?
I like it.
Yeah.
I like that there are fewer goals. I'll admit they're definitely broader, so I don't think it's any less work.
Right.
But it feels maybe easier to communicate, and that may be more adaptable as we find the year go on, that there are areas that we want to shift a little, so.
I agree with that.
I also want to make sure that we reaffirm somewhere in our board goals that centering student voice is a guiding principle to our board work.
I could write like a little preamble, like some of the values that guided the creation of these goals, and we could include that there. Okay, so I'm already starting to give myself homework, so I need to write it down because that's how things are working right now. So what if I format what we've talked about this evening, bring it forward for a brief discussion during our next workshop to see if there's anything that needs to be changed, and we could plan to put it on the consent agenda for the next meeting, and if there are things that come up during the workshop where it's like, we need a little more time, we can always pull it from consent. Does that feel okay in terms of process?
Yeah.
Okay. That is what we will do. Anything else on this item? Well, thank you. That went really well, and I think we have some great goal areas and are clear about our direction for this year, which feels good. So this was great. We already got a little bit into this conversation naturally while we were talking about goal areas, which was perfect. I'm going to turn it over to Director Khan, who will guide us through a student board representative program update. And, our reason for doing this is because we value you and your voices so much, and we're so grateful for your service. And we want to know how we can best support your work this year. So, Director Khan.
So I had the pleasure to meet with pretty much almost all of our student board representatives. And I think, and I want to apologize to Kimura specifically to say I'm so sorry that I couldn't arrange a meeting you one-on-one. So I don't know if she's online or anything, but Kimura is amazing. She had a lot to add to our group discussions when we were especially online during COVID. for our student board representatives, some of the things that have come up are that they would like to have more communication with each of our school board representatives, just to get to know everyone better and where we stand on what direction we want to see our school district going. And also, our student board reps also want to be possibly part of either one of our retreats or one of our workshops that we do separately outside the boardroom. That way, you know, they can see our process as to, okay, how do we come up with, you know, goals and policies and, you know, what we want to see in the future for our district. And of course, they also want to be active on our committees and have a voice on there. Let's see, anything you all want to add to this?
I think the only thing I'd add is I plan to make a Google Calendar for the student board representatives, so I could just give them the times and dates of the board meetings and workshops so they can keep that easily added to their schedule. I think that would just help. And like Tanya said, definitely committees. That's a really big thing. I just think that would help build relationships, one, with you guys, and two, just kind of so we can see how the process works of, you know, what each part and each role you guys play in the board. And also just focusing on adding sophomore reps. We plan to hold interviews for that soon whenever we send out applications. And like I said, just trying to reach out and build community through social media too. Instagram's a really big thing, I think, and I think that'll be the most helpful in trying to draw attention to student board representatives and even to try to get more students to come to our meetings and add inputs.
And then, and Oscar and Elif and myself, and I think you, Isabella, as well, we discussed having 2 representatives
Yes.
per grade. That seems to be more manageable, and in that way, we can have more of our students on there rather than having to wait, right, for an extended
Definitely.
period of time.
That seemed like a shared goal in between
Yeah.
everybody, and
Yeah.
it would make sense for scheduling reasons too, just so, you know, maybe somebody doesn't have to attend every meeting, but they could attend every other meeting, and that works better.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm thinking about the grade configuration transition next year too. We'll have 9th grade at the high school. So
Yes,
if we have
definitely.
2, if we change from 3 to 2 in
Right.
each grade, then that'll be a cohort of 8.
Definitely,
So-
and I think that works a lot better.
Yeah, so making that transition this year makes
Yes,
sense.
thinking about next year too, for sure.
Yep.
Yeah, great.
It's also just hard going 1 in every 3 meetings. That's once every month and a half.
Yes.
Yeah, right.
So it's just hard to stay updated on everything happening. So
Exactly.
we all just agreed that 2 is just a better number.
Yeah, as Oscar said, I think it helps us feel more connected, more kind of like we're playing a part, so we're able to see updates more often too.
That mean we're gonna lose one of our senior reps?
We'll stay for this year, but then
Yeah.
next year.
Right.
Next year. But yeah, because for our juniors, for our current juniors, only 2 joined last year.
Yeah, we only
So
had
we're
2.
already just basically set once.
Right.
Once we're all gone.
That makes sense. So you are going to leave us at the end of the year? You've already decided that?
Sorry.
Are we able to stay on past?
Well, I hope you come back and run for
Yeah,
school.
you just
Yes, always.
That's what I'm waiting for.
And
Great.
is there a minimum age to run for school board?
Isn't it 18? Or is it 21? It's so
I
arbitrary.
think there's a state law that guides it, but
All right,
I'm
we'll
not
have to
sure.
look into
law that
that,
guides
so we
it.
can really start hounding you guys when it
Yeah,
makes
we're gonna,
sense.
yeah. For some reason, 21 is sticking in my brain, but
I know in California it was 18 because we had an 18-year-old run once.
Really?
wow,
Wow.
amazing.
I don't know
Well, and I
what it
just-
is
I
in
mean,
Minnesota.
I feel like
see
you're just not
Dr.
busy
Lightfoot
enough in
looking up the
college.
policy right now.
Right.
The Secretary of State's website says
Those
21.
first few years after you
Oh,
graduate,
21.
it's so
It's 21,
boring.
yeah.
So with the Google Calendar, I'm wondering, is that a place that we can populate with committee meeting dates and times?
Yes, definitely.
and
That would help a
links?
lot if they interconnected too. It keeps everything in one place.
Yeah. So can we just send the
Yeah,
info to you?
that would be
Or would it
great.
be something we can add to?
just when we-
Definitely. Either way, if you guys would prefer to edit it, you could also just send it to me, and I'd be sure to make sure it goes to all the student board reps, so everything's kept in one place.
Great, thank you for that.
There are still certain meetings, though, that even if they're on the calendar, will be very difficult for us to attend. Like last year with the LAC, we were able to come to some meetings
Yeah.
sometimes, and that was with Flexible Fridays, with that late start on Fridays, and now we don't even have that anymore. So maybe having some designated meeting just to update student board reps, like specifically for the LAC, just because if we're never able to come to those meetings, it's hard
Yeah.
to stay on track.
We did a couple LAC meetings in the afternoon, after school was out.
Okay.
I don't know if that would work for you guys or not, but
For me, that would be
Yes.
easier. There's a few others. Who else is on it for this year?
Or, I think it's ELIF.
I think ELIF is on it.
okay.
Oh, yeah.
And then we also don't know what the
Yeah,
sophomores are going to want
sophomores
to do.
still too.
I will say, just kind of, as long as we're talking about committees, I was on the skip committee in 10th grade. And other than like literally putting my name down as like, hey, I want to be a part of this and join it, there was no communication like about dates, about meeting times, kind of even really other than like the little brief paragraph of what it was about. So that would be very, very helpful to have kind of more info moving forward. And I think that would be something for sure to put on the calendar.
Yes.
I don't think they met.
Yeah,
very-
They didn't meet.
So you were
that-
not in the dark.
Right,
don't worry.
that organization,
They're in transition now, so
Okay.
I will remind the leader of that group to, like, once they get structured, to send information out about the specifics.
You know what I would like to see is some of our former student board representatives who are now in college come just for like a guest kind of
Yeah.
appearance to see, okay, how was it by participating in our student board rep program, how did that positively impact them? You know,
Or
in
negatively.
college. Huh?
Or negatively.
Or negatively. Yeah, because it, you know, we're hoping that this gives them a real life experience of, you know, leadership. And so how has that been a positive impact or negative in their, you know, daily lives as, you know, adults or in college or whatever?
And I could definitely get into contact with Imani and even possibly Elliot about that too. I have both their contacts, so I'm sure you guys would be happy to hear from them.
oh,
Yes,
yes.
for
And
sure.
even if they just wanted to send videos, because they're probably busy.
Oh, yeah, that's a
Yes.
great idea.
But that would be great too. We can probably get Joe to.
I was gonna say, isn't Joe in like
He's in Finland.
Finland or
my God.
Norway?
Yeah,
or-
but he could send a video.
Yeah.
and those same videos could be used for your recruiting efforts for younger ages if you had kind of a firsthand account of how you use some of these skills in your early professional life.
So thinking about the videos, one thing we talked about last year was developing a website presence for the SBR program on the district website. You know, it could be housed on the school board website. You know, we can talk about the technicalities of that. But I was thinking about these videos in terms of recruitment and just, you know, awareness of what the program is. Then, of course, we would have you do videos before you go, right? And so is that of interest at all to kind of work on that piece?
I think that would definitely be a big interest. I think possibly after starting up at Instagram, we kind of get an idea of, you know, just how things are going, how people react to that, see. But I think a website would be helpful too, because then, you know, all the information's in one place, and even through that, it could be connected to kind of like a Hopkins Schools website, or maybe there's a link on the Hopkins Schools website so people can just be like, oh, there's a student board program, you know, they can learn more about it, see what we're doing, and then maybe even the workshop and the meeting kind of packets could be listed under there too, so it's all in one place.
And application materials and all that stuff?
Definitely.
I do think it could be hard logistically, though, to have it all ready in time. Like if because we want, I'm assuming, sophomore reps as soon as possible.
Yes.
And I don't know if we would be able to have videos and a website and all that stuff up in time to really help with recruiting, at least for this year. It could be set up to help with future years, though. But I do think it could also help if we want to set up, this is more internal, although for the website, we would need help.
Yeah.
Having like a hotline or something where if people want us to bring something to the board's attention, that
Yeah.
awareness could be useful, but as far as recruitment goes, I don't know that it would be super helpful this year.
I know the past year, we kind of like, just between the student board reps, we had that document of like, if you're not able to make it to a meeting, like put something
Yep.
within the document and then it will be brought up. So I think kind of tagging along with what Oscar said, having a more broad sense of that maybe on the webpage would be kind of a way to outreach to students that maybe don't want to come to meetings or can't make it, whatever the case may be, so that those voices are still then being heard as well.
Yeah, and adding on to Grace, I like the idea of that, just a different form of that. You know, maybe not a Google Doc, as you were talking about, maybe a hotline, something like that, or something connected to the website, something on our Instagram too, so people can just reach out easily through there. You know, maybe multiple ways for people then to get into contact with us too, other than just a Google Doc that, you know, people might lose or might not be able to find all the time, something like that.
It
Could also create a Google site, and then that would be protected within the district. I am a little bit concerned about having student board reps' identity public, but also I think that that would also give you a place to house the calendar and all that kind of back-end stuff that the student board reps might be using, and you can just make those pages accessible to actual board reps, but have a front-facing page for the videos and recruitment and that sort of thing. And that's something you can use your student account to create quite easily.
And the hotline could exist possibly in a Google form and be made into a QR that's on a poster posted in the high school too, that people can walk by, and it says to address the board or to notify your student board reps about an issue, use this form. Those are things I can help. I mean, I can't publish to the main school website, but as far as anything else technology-wise, I'm interested in that and I'm able to help. And I did have a follow-up question. Director Khan, you'd mentioned kind of actual introductions, meeting some of the rest of us, and I guess I wanted to know, were you envisioning like 3 of us and 3 of us perhaps that I mean, I know it's kind of a lot of people's schedules to coordinate, but were you hoping for like a meet and greet session? Maybe the other 6 of us?
Something like that. Also, as Tanya was mentioning, maybe like, I don't know exactly how the retreats and workshops outside of here work, but, you know, attending something like that, or even, well, I think one-on-one isn't really the best, but, you know, like you said, like 3-on-3 even, or just, especially with committees too, that would help a lot. We would stay in contact through there too, things like that, if anyone has anything else to add to that.
I think that would be great, especially with the sophomores. Like for us, we're talking about this, but we already have relatively set relationships with all of you. But as a sophomore, I remember last year, it was hard to start. Once you get the hang of things, it starts to go easier, but this is not a normal format that high school students are used to, coming to these very structured, formal meetings. So having some sort of more informal introduction before students are thrown into a board meeting could definitely make things run smoother.
Well, and I would say that as a newer board member, I don't, you know, I certainly could do with meeting, speaking more one-on-one. So whatever format that takes, I know committees being more active, being more informed and active in those will help, but would be willing to.
Another option, once we have the sophomore reps identified, is to do like a dinner, you know,
Yes, I
a
think that'd be
casual,
great.
right? We could do it on a board meeting night, not on a board meeting night. We have quorum issues that we have to deal with open meeting law, so we would have to make sure we're in compliance there, which is where that small group of 3 could be helpful, but yeah, just something more casual, right?
A dinner would be great, yeah, definitely.
Free food always works.
Well, right, for me at least, yeah. Great, well, thank you so much for sharing these ideas, and I think they all sound wonderful, and they're things that we can accomplish this year. And we'll be excited to see you at board meetings, of course, and work with Director Khan to make sure that you have all of the information you need. And then looking forward to collaborating with you too in some of this engagement work that we'll be doing at the high school and seeing how we can partner on that. I think that's going to be really powerful because it's true, these board meeting formats are really rigid. It's part of how local government was conceived of and designed. And we have legal constraints. And then we have just some cultural things that we have more control over, right? And so if we want to make sure that our meetings are inclusive for our student board reps and other students who want to come before the board, creating those relationships outside of a hyper-formal setting is really important. So anything else on this important item?
I just wanted to say thank you, Director Khan, for speaking with the students and bringing the update to us.
Thank you.
Fantastic. Well, it looks like we're ending our workshop a bit early, so we'll start our regular meeting at 7 p.m. Looking forward to seeing you back at the table a few minutes before 7. Enjoy your break. Thank you.
All right.
Good evening. This meeting of the Hopkins School Board is called to order at 7 p.m. Before we move into our open agenda period, we are going to do something that we've done in the past without any sort of regularity, but I think it would be helpful if we instate it as part of our meeting process, and thank you to Director Hartland for reminding me of this. We're going to go around the board table and introduce ourselves, describe a bit about our role in the community in addition to being school board members. We're so happy to have so many community members in the room this evening, and of course our community members joining us via the YouTube live stream. We want you to know who we are, who represents you on the Hopkins School Board. So we'll start with Director Hartland.
Certainly. Good evening, everyone. My name is Rachel Hartland, and I am one of the two newest board members. So I was elected last November and sworn in January. I am a parent in addition to being on the board. So my children are currently in 3rd and 5th grades at Meadowbrook Elementary, and my oldest child is in 7th grade now at North Junior High, and so that has been a very exciting transition for us, and it's us getting to know another important building and network of staff and administrators in our community. And we're very excited for him, and that is, we moved to the district on purpose, specifically to attend Hopkins schools, and we moved with the long view of them eventually being able to walk and bike to school, and so that's the first time that that's happened for us, and we are very excited about it. So we have been community members for 5 years. My husband and I own small businesses in the area, and that involvement and that deep interest in the future of Hopkins schools is what led me to run.
My name is Katie O'Shea Peterson. I have a 5th grader and a 6th grader in Hopkins Public Schools, as well as a niece and nephew, one in 4th grade, one at the high school. I am also a real estate agent, as well as a photographer and school board director. So thanks for coming.
Steve Adams. I'm the parent of 2 grown children who both attended Hopkins School District, K through 12, and have benefited greatly from that, both in their education that they got and in the social connections that they made while they were in the Hopkins District. And I'm beginning my 12th year on the board.
Rhoda Marie Puri-Reed, Superintendent. I'm entering my 6th year in this role. I have a 5th grader at Eisenhower Elementary in the Xing Xing Chinese Immersion Program, and I have a 9th grader at North, and I have a stepson who works as a kindergarten paraprofessional at Eisenhower Elementary in Miss Johnson's classroom, and he's helping in Kids & Co. to move some kids from the wait list into the program.
Excellent, thank you. I'm Jen Westmoreland, formerly Jen Bouchard. I'll be returning to my original name, which is Jen Westmoreland. I fully expect a transition period, so presenters, cabinet members, please don't feel stressed about calling me Chair Bouchard. There's a long history of me being Chair Bouchard, and I know it can kind of flow out, so I will certainly not be offended if that happens. I am serving my 2nd term on the board. I've been chair for 3 years. I am the parent of a 6th grader who is part of the Xing Xing program at Eisenhower Elementary.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. My name is Shannon Andreessen. I am a parent of a 9th grader at West Junior High, which feels hard to believe, and then also a recent graduate who I just moved into the U of M dorm this weekend, and am involved in the community through doing work with nonprofits.
Hi, everyone. My name is Tanya Khan. Both my kids went to Hopkins. They started at Alice Smith and then graduated from the high school My son is currently a sophomore at the University of Minnesota studying finance, and my daughter is a senior, and she's a political science major also at University of Minnesota. One of the things that really attracted me to Hopkins specifically was because we had such a fantastic amount of diversity and ethnic backgrounds here, and I just love the fact that my kids would fit in perfectly. They have really great friendships with pretty much all the kids they were with at the at Hopkins School District, and I'm really grateful for that. Some of the things that I have participated in are committees such as what is it called? The Diversity Committee, which is part of the Hopkins Police Department. I have also worked with the city of Hopkins regarding their zoning programs and their diversity zoning programs, which was separate. And I do occasional volunteer work as well. And that's me. Thanks.
Good evening. My name is Jason Ross. I am the second one of the newest members, similar to Rachel Hartland. I have 2 4th graders, and I have 1 1st grader. Yes, I have twins. They keep me young. My 1st grader keeps me young. I ran because I was very interested in, obviously helping my children understand local politics and why they should pay a lot of attention to what's going on in the state of Minnesota versus worrying about what's going on in Washington, D.C. Not to say that it's not important, but, I wanted my children to be able to understand and be able to potentially represent the school board rep as a student. And hopefully I pique their interest in having more robust conversations at home. That's me. Thank you.
Thank you, board colleagues. Momentarily, we will hear from our fabulous student board representatives who will introduce themselves at the beginning of their reports. Our next agenda item is open agenda. We hear public comment during 2 periods at each meeting. The first public comment period is during open agenda. That's for items that are on the agenda. I received public comment cards tonight for items that are not on the agenda, so that period happens at the end. And I'll go through our public comment protocol before that period at the end. We also get to hear from our student board representatives and our superintendent about things that are happening in the district during this period. So we'll start with our student board representatives report. Who would like to start?
I will take that first.
Isabella, fabulous.
Yes. So, hi, I'm Isabella McCoy. I'm the senior cohort coordinator of the Student Board Representative Program. It's great to be with you all in person and see all of your lovely faces. As you all know, we are now in our 2nd week back to school. The new sophomores are taking time to adjust and figuring out their way around school. Personally, for seniors, we already know the Hopkins lowdown, so lots of us are focusing on our careers after high school. Many seniors are taking the time to schedule appointments with their counselors, including myself. Lots of us are also filling out our common apps, which I'm sure brings on a little stress. Many teachers have been very helpful in guiding us, particularly our Royals Connect teachers. It was great being able to meet one-on-one with them and receive some guidance. I know a real concern for many seniors and even juniors is anticipating how Royals Connect will look differently than Opportunity Hour. A great part of Royals Connect is being able to receive specific help for your needs during that time. So I'm interested to see how this will look in terms of signing up for classes in chunks, which is what we have been told by teachers. Some students have already been applying to college, while others are preparing to. We appreciate all the support Hopkins continues to give us with that. I also think it's great that we can meet with schools and advise students to take advantage of this, especially in the upcoming months. Naviance is a great tool to go about doing this. I just wanted to let seniors know there are an abundance of resources if you are feeling some anxiety or nervousness about your future, so don't be afraid to reach out or ask for help. Thank you.
Thank you so much. It's great to have you here this evening. Our student board reps also participated in our workshop discussion before the meeting about board goal setting, and we talked about some of our student board representative goals and things that we want to accomplish as a team this year. So grateful for your voices at the table. Who's next?
That would be me. Thank you, Chair Westmoreland.
Thank you. That's the first time I've been called that at this table, so I'm honored that it was by you.
Hello, members of the board, superintendent. It is great to be back. Overall, I would say the beginning of the year has started off pretty smoothly. Everything is going exactly how you think it would. But I would like to acknowledge a bit of a different atmosphere that I think students have been feeling this year compared to last, especially upperclassmen who have experienced Hopkins in past years. I think it's a general feeling of being more restricted. Stuff feels more restricted in general. On a large scale, there's pretty obvious examples of this. Tardiness is a much bigger deal this year than it ever has been in the past, and students see that all the time. But then there's also smaller examples too that start to add up. So for example, in the cafeteria, there are tables just outside, literally just outside, like right next to the window. Students are no longer allowed to eat out there. I'm not talking about open campus, just eating outside on campus. And because personally I love eating outside, it's a beautiful day, why not? When I've asked the administrator or whoever is guarding the door, the answer has been that in past years, students have left, therefore no students allowed outside, period. And I think a lot of students are feeling that, and I don't think it is a positive reaction in general. With that being said, there are some very exciting things happening at the school. For example, our extracurricular fair is happening hopefully pretty soon, where students will be able to explore all the clubs that are available. And the cast list for our musical this year was just announced, which is Legally Blonde. So that should be very exciting. That's all I've got. Thank you.
Thank you, Oscar. Always appreciate your candid observations about what's happening at the high school. It's really helpful for us. So thank you. Grace.
All right. For those of you who may be listening for the first time, my name is Grace Riley, and I am the junior representative, or one of the junior representatives for the Hopkins School Board. And throughout the first week of school, we've done many things. We've officially announced the homecoming game is on the 14th, with the dance soon to follow. All 4 fall sports, including football, have begun, and we have overall welcomed many new sophomores to the HHS building. However, some issues before the school year have eclipsed this exciting time for our junior class. The new counselor for juniors with the last name beginning from L through Z was finally announced to the student body in the junior class meeting on the first day of school. This left many juniors confused as to who to reach out to for things such as schedule changes and general questions and concerns over the summer, with many saying, including myself, that they felt unprepared going into the school year. But other than that, like I said previously, everything else has been great. We have been loving all of the classes, all of the new electives that have opened, and overall it's been a really positive experience.
Thank you very much. Appreciate you being here. Any questions or comments for our student board reps?
Chair Westmoreland.
Yes, Vice Chair Andreessen.
I just wanted to say I'm so excited to have you at the table and to start this school year with you, and also that you've had such nice experience serving on the school board. Just really excited. Thanks.
We couldn't do it without you.
You probably could.
Great, let's move on to our superintendent's report with Dr. Mary Peary-Reed.
Okay, thank you, Chair Westmoreland. I'll have to get used to saying that. So I'm really happy to see everyone here this evening, and I also want to thank you for your honest reflections on how school is going for you and your peers, both positively, and we also appreciate the critical feedback as well, so thank you. So today in my report, I'm just going to share a few highlights from the start of school, and then because we're officially launching into the goal-setting phase of our leadership work at the board, district, and school levels, then I'll talk a bit about who we are and where we are with our vision. So we're in the second week of school for most of our sites. And this is the week when we practice lots of different things, including classroom routines, bus routes, drop-off and pickup, and all of the practices that help our students feel more acclimated to school and classrooms, and also the things that help us build conditions for success. We also host student assemblies in many of our schools during the first and second week, and this helps us communicate important messages to our students that we want them all to hear at the same time. So this is a photo of the assembly that was held last week at West Junior High, and as you can hopefully see in the photo, lots of positive energy and expectation, and also lots of junior high-sized bodies in that space. So thanks to Principal Camphy, Dr. Camphy, who is in our audience, for all of the work that you do leading West Junior High. And these are our juniors, or members of the class of 2024, hearing from Principal Ballard and a few of their assistant principals on keys to success for the school year. Mr. Ward, a new assistant principal for the high school, talked to scholars about the importance of having one big goal for the year. So we appreciate all of the messages that our leaders and staff thoughtfully put together for students. We also have assemblies at the elementary level. I don't have any pictures of that, but it's a really great opportunity to get all of the school community on the same page. So no, we did not let any big construction projects stop us from starting school last week. This is truly a sight to see at Alice Smith. You'll have to visit in person, because what you can't see well in this photo is a 16-foot hole adjacent to the school where they're building some kind of a water management system that will undergird the new parking lot. Principal Navidad was saying that some of his students spend the entire recess watching the monster trucks move dirt and lay the structure instead of, swinging on the swings. Today was day one for Harley Hopkins and Transition Plus. So Director Contreras, Director Fisher and I visited both spots. No good pictures of students at Transition Plus. We'll look for some to share with you in the future. But here are our youngest students in action, starting to build their scholarly skills. And when you visit Harley, make sure you step into the 3 motor rooms that have been installed. These are spaces where our little students can play, but more importantly, develop their gross motor and cooperation skills in a structured and safe setting. Virtual EDU is starting their school year strong with 71 secondary students and 39 elementary students. The Virtual EDU team hosted an orientation last week, meeting approximately 80% of their families to set students up for success. So we're grateful for the efforts of that team. I'll now transition from first and second week highlights to a little bit about who we are and where we are now with our vision in Hopkins. It's great that we have some community members and parents in the space who can hear this. This is info that we shared with our staff at our Welcome Back event on August 23, and so hopefully for community members who might listen in now or later, it's helpful information for you as well. Our schools are located in the cities of Hopkins, Minnetonka, and Golden Valley, and if you include preschool, early childhood, family education, early childhood special education, and Transition Plus, then we do serve above and beyond 7,000 students, and you'll hear more detail in an enrollment update scheduled for a bit later in the meeting. Part of who we are in Hopkins and what makes us special is that we really are a microcosm of the world. As Director Khan was saying earlier, our students speak more than 80 languages, and multilingualism aligns very nicely with 2 of our graduate traits, being globally minded and well-traveled. Our collective identity not only informs Vision 2031, but reciprocally, this vision informs who we are and who we aspire to become. One of our core beliefs is that every student deserves to become a scholar and reach their true potential. And in Hopkins, we know that we need a bold vision and a detailed strategic plan to help us reimagine a public education system that serves every student at the highest level and prepares them for success. So Vision 2031 was launched in the fall of 2018 and truly is a collective vision because it was informed by hundreds of staff, parents, students, and community members through summer-long engagement activities, 2 full days of strategic visioning with an outside thought partner, and 9 task forces that helped us articulate what success looks like. Vision 2031 articulates core values such as love and vigilant equity, and these core values were selected by our very own staff. The vision also identifies success indicators, traits of our Hopkins graduate. I'm going to go back to the slides. You can continue looking at the yellow roadmap. Traits of our Hopkins graduate and key innovation drivers. It's a really bold vision that we have now turned into a detailed roadmap. And this roadmap is informed by the many recommendations that came from students, staff, parents, and community members who sat on our task forces in 2018, 2020, and 2021. And really, Hopkins has always been a beacon of innovation, even in the extreme, in the face of extreme pandemic challenge. Our staff continued to find purpose and to innovate. And here are some examples of our recent innovations. And I reminded staff of these innovations during the Welcome Back address so they could see their own work and really putting students at the center of this innovative programming and creation of student experiences. So blending preschool programming to make it less confusing for families, creating outdoor immersion and outside of school experiential learning, blending age groups, project-based learning at multiple schools, Spanish immersion at 2 of our elementary schools, a K-12 online academy, which now serves as an exemplar for the entire state of Minnesota, and a collaborative lab school where students do have the opportunity to become true scholars as they work alongside their teachers to co-design curriculum and learning experiences. So Hopkins staff, in partnership with students, in partnership with parents, community members, have built a lot of great programs for our students, and we're grateful for the innovative thinking and really putting students and parent voice first, and we look forward to the continued great work ahead. And then finally, I just wanted to end on this extra positive note. I wanted to highlight one of our very own school leaders, Principal Melissa Ness, who is being recognized by the Minnesota Elementary School Principals Association. She was selected by the organization to receive the 2022 Leadership Achievement Award. Melissa Ness is in her 4th year of school leadership, and she really is an exemplary school leader for her school community, and we're very proud of her. So congratulations, Principal Ness. And with that, I will see if there's any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Mary Perry Reed. Any questions or comments from my board colleagues, including our student board reps? Well, thank you. With that, I would look for a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
I have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve the agenda. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. All opposed, nay. Motion carries. Next, I would look for a motion to approve the consent calendar.
So moved.
I have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve the consent calendar. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion carries. Next, we'll move to our treasurer's report with Treasurer Adams.
Thank you, Chair Westmoreland. Not a whole lot to report since it's only been a week since we last met, but we did have some expenses of note. It's kind of interesting to note that we spent $2,500 for envelopes. We still believe in direct mail, so not many people do that anymore, but that's how we reach all of our constituents and parents. We had several subscription fees for our annual cybersecurity software, and I was pleased to see that, and I was chatted with Director Wetter just before the meeting, because there have been a number of cybersecurity attacks on school districts in particular across the nation this year. And for some reason, the cyber robbers are targeting school districts. So I'm glad to hear that it hasn't happened to us and that we've got precautions in place. And we spent about $160,000 for classroom projectors and projection boards in the last 2 weeks, or last week, actually. And I believe those went to North Junior High. So with that, I move that we approve total disbursements in the amount of $640,816.93 for the period August 23 through August 30th, 2022.
I have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve the treasurer's report. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion carries. Next, we'll move into new business and little process context for our community. New business items either require us to take action as a board or some do not. Some are informative for us and for our community. So this is an informational item. The board will not vote on it. And we're happy that you're here to receive the information with us this evening. I'll turn it over to Dr. Mary Perry Reed.
Thank you, Chair Westmoreland. I'd like to welcome Dr. Lightfoot, our Assistant Superintendent, to the table, Director Goldati, charge of Communications and Marketing, to the table, and I believe our Business Analyst, Pam Carmen, is in the audience if there are data-specific questions. So this is more of an informal enrollment report. We are getting ready to put together the analysis for the October and November comprehensive enrollment report. So we just want to give you an update right now on where our enrollment is at. And thanks to you, Dr. Lightfoot and Jolene Goldati for putting together this information for us. And then we'll see if board members have questions, as your questions may inform the information that we bring back to you in October and November.
Absolutely. Thank you. Good to be with you this evening. We did do our best to provide the information for you. As you can see, we do daily collections of information, and it fluctuates, especially as we get things rolling at this point in time of the year. One of the other key components that I think is important for people to understand is that this is the best set of information that we have right now. Minnesota does have, from the Department of Education, a 15-day period of drop, meaning that if students have not reported for 15 days, then we do drop them. We do our best as we have students who might be enrolled, but we haven't had the opportunity to know if they have not shown at this point where they might be. We do our best to try to gather that information as well. So a lot of that is ongoing, especially in these initial weeks as we get started. But as some key data points, some of the pieces that we start to take a look at with the opening of school, and one of the questions that you as a board have asked of us is to make sure that we provide as much information as we can related to enrollment, because as you're aware, that enrollment does drive the revenue element, most of the revenue element that is part of our revenue planning and part of our budgeting as well. So with that, the information that we provided you this evening, a couple key columns that I'll draw attention to, a couple key pieces of information that are here, and then of course, as it is a discussion item, we're here to address the questions we can address, let you know the information that we're looking at, and as well seek guidance from you about information that we can be collecting as we come back in front of you in October and November with the additional more comprehensive enrollment report. So with that, one of the key columns that we included this time so that you could take a look at information was where we landed when we were looking at our enrollment in June. So if you take a look at, and I'll direct you to that last page, if you take a look at where we ended in June, total students around 6,654. I think that's an important number because as you look at where we were when we pulled the data to get ready for this report on 8/31, you'll see that overall our total students really right now are 6,788. That's an increase over where we were in June, so it shows some good summer growth, if you will. One of the things that we do in our October, November is we try to use the best set of information that we have in October, November to look at where our projections might be. So if you look at that projection column, that's the first column of numbers that's there. That projection column was right around 6850. So you'll see that where we are right now is that where we started, beginning with our count in June, and where we thought we might be is somewhere in the middle, which shows that we are doing growth, and we thought we might have a little bit, and I'll talk about this in a little bit larger growth in the virtual program, something that we haven't seen to the extent that we thought we would, predominantly in the elementary. I'll talk a little bit about that as well. I mean, I think that kind of flows through with some of the things that we've heard from the community as well, through some of the research that we've been doing there throughout the course of the spring information that we've been collecting. But overall, what you will see is you will see increased numbers. In particular, some of the things that I think are good to kind of point out for you as you look at those, where you will see a key number is kindergarten. Generally, that's the hardest one for us to really kind of predict because while we use Hennepin County birth data, we use other sets of information to give us a kind of a guide of where we think that will land for kindergarten. It is one of those that is more difficult because it can vary quite greatly. As you saw last year with the pandemic, we were thinking we might be in the lower 500s and ended up at a 600 mark in partner kind of with the 40 students that were held back from the pandemic that added to the number that kind of brought us to that closer to 600 number. Using birth rate data, we thought we'd probably land about 535 as a little bit more of a conservative kind of mark that we were planning for. If you look right now, as of the date on 8/31, we were at 553. So a few more kindergartners than we were anticipating, which is a good sign. Continues to follow the patterns if you look at those additional years of being over 500 for kindergarten as we think about serving kindergartners within the district. So I think that number is another important element. If you look at overall elementary, you'll see that we ended in June at 3521. We're up at 3626. We were anticipating a little bit higher as it relates to the virtual elementary, and I think that that's another space that really kind of just might draw your attention to. What we had with the virtual programming, and this was a hard one for us because we had a year where we had over 200 in virtual when we were really kind of at the full functioning of the program elements last year. As we gathered information and looked at what was happening, we did some estimates, but remember those estimates and projections somewhere around October, November with some adjustments later in the year, but we just didn't really kind of have a total sense of where families would land because they were still trying to make some of those decisions. What we do know is that families that did not choose to remain in virtual programming, they were more likely to come back into the classroom, and specifically where we saw some of the biggest sets make that decision were grade transitions. So 6th graders moving into 7th, 9th graders moving into 10th. They went back to in-person programming, and the largest percentages of those that made different decisions. We were fortunate that they made the decisions to remain on Hopkins, so we saw those numbers being consistent in that area as well. What we didn't see is we didn't see at the elementary, if you take a look at the elementary and virtual, What we didn't see there was as large a number as we thought we might. Originally, we were projecting around 100 at the elementary level. You'll see right now, that's around 31. And I think that was consistent, and Jolene, you may be able to speak to this, with what we heard from the community. More likely where we are to see growth in virtual is really in the upper grades. And so I think that's somewhat of the data is showing us right now as we think about how to utilize this information as we move forward into next year and think through what that might look like for us as part of our October and November projections that are ahead of us as well. Some of the other information that I think is relevant is the secondary programming. If you take a look at the secondary programming, piece that I think is really important there is we ended the year at 3133. We anticipated that we might land around 3164. Right now on 831, we were 3162. So we're pretty spot on with what we thought at the secondary would occur. And that, there again, does show continued growth and growth that we had planned on seeing and experiencing. So good for us there. Again, this is preliminary. What we'll now go back and do, especially after the 15-day drop, is get a sense, a more detailed sense of what occurred. We do wait for that more detailed sense because we want to make sure we have the best set of data to work with. The other thing that we work for and kind of wait for is that October 1st number, because that's our consistent point in time when we have all of that reporting data that has been done on October 1st as part of our benchmark. So I know that's a lot of data. I know that's a lot of numbers. I know that's a lot of information that I just put in front of you. But we are more than happy to address what we know and to take notes on what we may not be able to answer now, but can work to get to you at our October, November timeframe.
Well, it's a good thing we like data, so thank you very much, appreciate it. Questions or comments?
I did just have a question about the virtual EDU. Do we have any sense of what kind of impact the lower than expected enrollment in it might have on, I don't know, future offerings or anything like that for the year?
By future offerings, you mean
How
different
the
ways of
year's
the
going to
program?
look, I guess, would be
Yep.
a better way to ask that question.
Yeah, I'll do my best, and I think that that might be another component maybe for October, November that we can report more directly on. But part of the work that the elementary was doing is more of the multi-grade approach and really trying to look at that level of platform. When you think about general classes, and if you look at where some of those enrollments are, and I think that's an excellent point, if you look at 1 kindergartner and 3 first graders, obviously that's going to be a different level of learning and planning for in a different set of circumstances than just a particular grade. So in part, I think that's the ability of us to really design programming that is more personalized in the virtual space has been what our focus has been on personalized learning, giving the opportunity to look at more inquiry-based learning experiences, so we would also have the opportunity to develop that. And we're fortunate to have an incredible cadre of staff that are really experts in using digital platforms to develop personalized learning, and it's something that we can continue to learn from. So one of the things that I think might be helpful is if we can bring back in October, November, the specific ways in which they're doing some of that to communicate that information as well, we certainly can.
That would be great. Thank you.
I have a question. I participated in, and some other community members did as well, some kind of thought partnering and market research around virtual EDU in the second half of last year. And I was wondering if either some reporting or some fruits of that effort might shape marketing, or is there additional marketing plans for the virtual EDU for this coming year?
Yeah, I think that's a great question, Dr. Hartland, or Director Hartland. So, we did do some pretty extensive market research last spring around virtual EDU. And one of the things I think that came out really loud and clear was that this was the right time the right idea, the right concept to roll out a virtual online program. What's a little unknown is how to plan for a post-pandemic experience. Last year, we were definitely more in a pandemic space. Last year when we were opening school, we weren't expecting Delta and to be in a pandemic space again. We didn't know to what extent we would be in that again this fall. And it seems like we're more in that post space. In the market research, one of the things also that came out was that there wasn't as much viability at the elementary level. Parents by far preferred an in-person experience. At the secondary level, starting maybe at like the 5th, 6th grade, that's when parents started really becoming interested in exploring some sort of hybrid experience, maybe not a full virtual experience, but some classes online, some classes in person. And at that secondary level was when the viability of virtual EDU really could, that's where it had its most potential according to the market research. And in that, families still wanted to be connected to each other. They wanted to not just be alone in their bedroom. They really wanted to have a sense of community, which aligns really well to the philosophy of our virtual EDU programming. So knowing that and knowing the volatility of not knowing where we would be this fall, we really focused our marketing efforts on the metro and not going very much beyond that, because we wanted families to be able to come in and participate in some of the in-person experiences that virtual EDU does offer. Now into the future, I think the goal, and this is probably extending beyond into a space virtual EDU also needs to be a part of in this conversation, but to have, I think the idea would be to have communities throughout the state of Minnesota that have enrollment, so they could have satellite experiences and students could connect throughout. I think that would be the goal moving forward. So I think we're kind of in that space of okay, we're past hopefully the pandemic, and then what, how does this look without that as part of the offering and what families need.
Thank you.
Chair Westmoreland,
Yes.
I'm just wondering, have you had any conversations with other districts that operate virtual curricula? And I'm just wondering if our experience is typical of what's being seen right now across the scope. But I mean, 3 days of data is not, not enough to make a projection probably. But I'm just wondering if other districts are experiencing the same effect.
Are you asking if other districts their virtual programs are also maybe experiencing slightly lower enrollment than expected?
Yeah.
That's a really good question, and I think we should look into that. I don't know that. Maybe.
Yeah, with many starting this week, like you just identified, they're getting their numbers as well. It certainly is something that we can gather, and hopefully I think a data point in that October-November timeframe that we can get that for you as well, especially with that October 1st report.
Because I can foresee that a lot of parents would try and take their kids back into a in-person learning experience after what they've gone through in the last 2 years. So it wouldn't surprise me if every virtual academy is having similar kinds of issues. But.
Well, Treasurer Adams, at AMSD, sometimes we get polled on our enrollment in general, so we could ask for a question about virtual programs.
Sounds good. Yeah.
There also is District 287 that we could speak with. They run Northern Star Online.
That's true.
And have a long history of ups and downs with enrollment.
Right.
Well, the great news is that our enrollment continues to go up, which is certainly not the experience of some other districts in Minnesota. And so that was very positive to see, and looking forward to doing a deeper dive into some of these numbers in October or November. Something you always bring before us is how many students are joining us from outside the district in an environment with school choice. Anecdotally, I have people reach out to me to say, oh, I'm in this other district, but I'm bringing my kids to Hopkins. Not in any sort of controlled qualitative data analysis method, but I've heard from more families who are choosing Hopkins, which is really exciting as well. So looking forward to the data on that, just so we can understand that better as a board. Other questions or comments for the enrollment team? Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we'll move to our policies in first read. I'll turn it over to Vice Chair Andreessen, who heads up our Policy and Monitoring Committee.
Thank you, Chair Westmoreland. I am happy to have Assistant Superintendent Lightfoot remain at the table so we can talk about the policies that we bring before you today in first read. Most of them are part of our, actually I would say all of them, correct me if I'm wrong, our routine annual review process. Not very many changes, except I will again talk about one that affects all of us here at the board table. The Minnesota legislature upped the amount of money that school board members can make without initiating a conflict of interest, and that is reflected in, the new amount is reflected in this policy. It was a very necessary move and one that impacts me personally as I get to spend more time at Gatewood Elementary in the Links to Learning room and helping out our schools who are in desperate need of all community members rallying behind them right now. So with that, I will turn it over to Assistant Superintendent Lightfoot to talk more in detail about the policies before all of us today.
Certainly. Thank you, Director Andreessen. Let's start with 204. Number of them here. As identified, these are pretty routine elements. At the beginning of the school year, we go through those policies that require annual review. These are reviewed on an annual basis, many with not substantial changes, but we do go through all of these to just make sure they're all set up. The first one is 204, which is school board meeting minutes. As you will note, there were some minor components added from the Minnesota School Board Association model policy. Part of that work was really the addition within the legal references, but that was really the only modification that it made based on any of the substantial items that were there. So there really isn't anything about the school board meeting minutes that has changed. Would be open to any questions that might be coming from the board related to this item. Seeing none. 210 is the conflict of interest school board members policy that we have. There again, specific changes from the Minnesota School Board Association. Some of them more ministerial in some of the grammatical elements which they have updated. One of the key items that was changed here was the change from the 8,000 figure to the 20,000 figure that was done as the work of the Minnesota legislature. For the 2022 school year. That has been added. There was additional information that was included from some additional statutes. That information was also added at the end of the policy for the model school board. We would be recommending that those items that they had added also be included. So with that, are there any other questions around policy 210?
Yes, I have a question, Chair Westmoreland. Just to clarify, for the sake of community members here, when we say increase from 8,000 to 20,000, we're talking about dollars earned by board members in the district for doing other than board work.
Correct.
Correct? Okay. Thank you.
Chair Westmoreland.
Yes.
And I should point out that that change was really desired a lot by outstate school districts, because in some of the smaller school districts in the state, the board drives school bus, for example, in the morning or, in the evening, and they do a lot of double duty. especially in outstate schools. So it was lobbied for by primarily outstate school districts. So besides Director Andreessen being positively affected, it helped a lot of other school districts throughout the state.
Thank you. Anything else on policy 210? We can move along.
All right. Policy 214 is another annual review. Out-of-state travel by school board members, no recommended changes. Nothing really in particular as well from MSBA model policy. Just one that is in front of you as you think about the upcoming board development that may or may not occur throughout the course of the year. Good one to review with you. Any questions regarding 214?
Thank you.
All right. Family Medical Leave Act. Family Medical Leave Act is an annual review policy. What you will note is that there was some specific information added based on federal language that had changed. So this one has been updated. This one is updated with that federal language. It also includes in the model MSBA policy, which I think is a good addition. There is some specific FMLA language that is pursuant to education, that being tied to when FMLA leave can occur at the end of a learning period. So for example, what it looks like at the end of a semester or beginning of a semester with the district's ability to work with an individual on managing that leave to help coincide with the best learning experience within classrooms. That information is here as well, an addition that MSBA did add. It's always been there, but at least they put this information in writing within the policy as a reference point. We would be recommending that you adopt the model MSBA policy with this. It is specific in language there, and I would be open to any questions around 410.
Looks like we can keep going.
Okay. 414 is the mandated reporting of child neglect. You will see that there were substantial changes done with the model MSBA policy. We would be recommending that the model MSBA policy be adopted. You will see the specific information done that was part of the legislative work as well. I do believe that the additions here reflect the full language contained in the statutes that were referenced, and we would be recommending that as a modification based on the recommendation of the Minnesota School Board Council.
I think we can
Okay.
keep going. Thank you.
Staff ethics, conflict of interest. There again, this is an annual review. No specific changes, and this is a Hopkins policy. This one we put in front just to make sure that it is a reviewed set of standards. There really were no recommended changes, and as I said before, is a Hopkins-only policy. Any questions on 456? And then the last one for this evening is the acceptable electronic resources use. Director Wetter here is here as well in case there are specific questions around any of the legislative work that was done within the last session. There were specific components that were passed as part of that legislative session that really have been embedded in the model MSBA policy. Those really have to identify key components of technology providers so that there are definitions of what those are. Also includes limit on screen time for children in preschool and kindergarten. Also contains information related to the work that we need to do with our applications and the use of specific technology programming to make sure that we have those informations contained. And then how, if we look at a school-issued device or any material on a school-issued device, how that would occur and specific information that comes directly from statute. So with that, that information is part of the recommended changes from MSBA, and you will see that we are recommending that we adopt those components as well. Any questions on 524?
Thank you, Assistant Superintendent Lightfoot and our monitoring committee for bringing our policies into compliance with state statute, for your attention to MSBA model policy, and for all of your work on these kind of normal policy reviews. We have this cycle that we're going through, and then, of course, we're creating new policy and making policy changes to align to Vision 2031. And so our monitoring committee is constantly at work and does a great job for us. So thank you.
Thank you.
Any further questions or comments from board members? Okay, with that, I would look for a motion that the board approve the above policies in first read, and that the board direct the administration to prepare the policies for approval in second read at the next meeting as part of consent.
So moved.
I have a motion. Is there a second?
Second?
I have a motion and a second to approve the above policies in first read. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion carries. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Nick.
That concludes our new business. We will move into board member reports.
Chair Westmoreland.
Director Adams.
Not a lot to report in the last week, but I did go to the state fair, and I was pleased to see in the Fine Arts Pavilion, a photograph by one of our staff members, Scott Stillman, who's a teacher in Glen Lake. He didn't win an award, but it was a very nice photograph of the light rail in downtown Hopkins under construction. So just to remind everybody that Rock and Royal is this Saturday in downtown Hopkins. So make sure you've got that on your calendar. And AMSD on Friday is always interesting this time of year because it is usually a presentation, and it is again this year, by Bill Morris and Peter Leatherman, who conduct in August a very thorough survey of people's attitudes about education in Minnesota. And it always provides some surprising results and sometimes some very depressing results. So I would advise people that are interested to log into to watch that, because it's in person and it is via live stream. And I would just like to recognize or note the passing of Buzz Flolid. Probably no one in this room knows who Buzz was, but at the time we merged with Golden Valley School District back in the 80s, or 78, I can't remember what year exactly, but Buzz was the principal at Golden Valley High School and subsequently became the assistant principal at Hopkins High School, and was well loved by staff and his colleagues, and he passed away this last week. Arrangements haven't been made yet, so I'll notify people when that happens, but there are a lot of people that have very fond memories of Buzz Flolid, so thought I would recognize that.
Thank you, Director Adams. And as Director Adams mentioned, we had a board meeting last week where most of us gave board reports at that point, so our board reports might be a little bit slim tonight.
Chair Westmoreland?
Yes.
I just wanted to add that one of our students, former Director Kurus,
Oh,
his daughter, Jessica, won an award for a table that she built, and
Oh,
that was
really?
at the state fair as well.
Okay. I
Wonderful.
ran into Doobie the other day, well, 3 times in 1 week. It was amazing. But he and his wife, Joyce, who's also an employee in the district, were setting up the course for the triathlon at Shady Oak Lake, so, which I think happened last Saturday. So Doobie's a former board member as well.
Other board reports.
Yes, I have one, Chair Westmoreland. The board attended a retreat or grounding since we met last, and during that, we had kind of a fantastic state of our district overview that included some subject matter experts on, from logistics to mental health to special education services, district goals. And in particular, I wanted to highlight busing. I did this publicly on the parents' Facebook account, but wanted to mention that our busing for the beginning of this year has been remarkably unremarkable, and that it's just been so wonderfully smooth. And I mean, I do this is my first year as a board member at the beginning of the school year, but even in years past, definitely have heard of all sorts of issues. And so I wanted to extend my thanks specifically to our transportation teams, to Lake County country transportation, and then all the parents, all the partners that made that first week happen, because it's really fantastic. And then the board also, over the summer, read a book based on a Parent Advisory Council's recommendation that was called Everything You Wanted to Know About Indians But Were Afraid to Ask. And the discussion that followed from that, based on that parent group's recommendation, was really informative and really was an excellent grounding for our values as we move through this year.
Thank you, Director Hartland. Other board reports.
Chair Westmoreland.
Director Khan.
I just wanted to, I don't know if everyone attended our workshop earlier today, but I just wanted to summarize that we had our school board, student school board representatives here with us. And I wanted to recognize that we have some amazing leaders coming out of our schools, especially represented by our student board representatives. They have taken a lot of initiative to be in leadership roles, being part of our committees, having a very strong opinion in a good way at our table, and just being part of our process regarding policy even. And I wanted to extend my appreciation for our amazing school board representatives.
Amen.
Thank you, Director Khan, and thank you for your work as the liaison to the student board representatives. Last call for board member reports. Thank you. So we'll move on to incidental reports. I would look for a motion to accept the incidental reports.
So moved.
I have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second to accept the incidental reports. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion carries. Next, we'll move into our second public comment period for items not on the agenda. I've received 5 public comment cards. All public commenters here this evening will have a chance to come before the board and give their comment. I am going to read our public comment guidelines and then get my stopwatch ready, which is the part that I always, I'm most stressed about the stopwatch. So the Hopkins School Board believes that hearing from our community members is crucial for implementing Vision 2031. If you wish to contact the board via email instead of publicly commenting at a meeting, you can use the school board email address that's included in each school board packet, or you can contact us individually as school board members if you'd rather have a one-on-one conversation versus presenting at a public meeting. On the school board page of the district website, you can find our contact information, and we always welcome a conversation with you. At board meetings, public comment will be received both in person and through voicemail. Instructions for how to leave a voicemail to be played at the board meeting can be found in the board packet on the district website. As you know, we have 2 public comment sessions per meeting. The first is at the beginning and pertains to items on the agenda. The second, which we are in right now, is at the end and pertains to items not on the agenda. Each public comment section lasts for 30 minutes, and we allow comments up to 3 minutes for each person. And we don't have this situation tonight, but as outlined in the board meeting protocols on the board website, if we have more community members than 10 per comment section, the first 5 voicemails received will be played, and the first 5 people to have submitted public comment cards before the meeting begins will be invited to the table. That is not the case tonight, but for future reference. These are the guidelines for public comment. Please keep your comments to 3 minutes or less. The public comment period at school board meetings is for input only. Members of the school board will not respond directly to public comments that are made at this meeting. No specific action will be taken at this meeting in response to comments that are made or issues that are raised during the public comment period related to items not on the agenda. If the board determines that action is appropriate, that action will occur at a future board meeting. If you have left your contact information on the comment card, a district representative may follow up with you after the meeting. I will recognize one speaker at a time. Only those speakers who are recognized will be permitted to speak. Individuals who interfere with or interrupt speakers, the board, or the proceedings may be asked to leave. Personal attacks on any individual, including any other speaker during the public comment session, are unacceptable, as are obscenities or profanity. Persistence in making such remarks will end the individual's opportunity to address the board and may result in the individual being directed to leave. I will rule out of order any statement that would violate state or federal law, school board policy, or the privacy rights of an individual. Minnesota's open meeting law prohibits the discussion of private educational data during an open meeting. Accordingly, during the public comment session, no person may discuss private educational data on an identifiable student. The open meeting law also requires the board to close a meeting for preliminary consideration of allegations against an employee. Accordingly, community members who have concerns about an employee or want to file a complaint or allegations against an employee are encouraged to contact the superintendent directly. Repeated violations of these time, place, and manner restrictions may also lead to the meeting being briefly recessed or adjourned. Community members will have an opportunity to be heard within the limits of the law and subject to the time, place, and manner restrictions above. We appreciate you being here and your willingness to participate in public comment this evening. So I will call our first commenter to the table as I get my stopwatch up and running. Ellie Kretz.
Hi, everyone. Good evening, board members, student members, who I always learn the most from, no offense to the rest of you, Superintendent Mary Perry Reed. My name is Ellie Kretz, and I'm the mom to a second grader at Eisenhower Elementary and a 4-year-old who will start kindergarten next fall. People often ask me about our experience in the Hopkins district. In fact, this morning, we didn't have daycare coverage, so I was at Burns Park, and somebody was asking me how we feel about the Hopkins district. They had 2 smaller kids. So I want to share with you what I share with them as I kind of think through this over. I've looked at it over the summer. To prepare our students for the future world, there's no place I would rather have my kids than here in Hopkins. And I say this both as a parent and as someone who has worked for Fortune 500 companies for over 20 years. The workforce and community members that we need are ones that are adaptable, capable of critical thinking, and with a lens to equity, all things that we are focused on here in Hopkins, as Dr. Mary Perry Reed pointed out in the Vision 2031. We need people who recognize that the differences that exist among us make us stronger, but only if we're brave enough to talk about those differences and explore our different experiences, not if we bury them below the surface. We need community members and a workforce who support people of different backgrounds, races, religions, and orientations. I'm so appreciative of Hopkins being willing to take community input in various forms and forums for parents. I personally have attended 3 of those sessions in just the last year. But also, the district is willing to have frank discussions about topics. One of those was, I know we had a discussion about adding holidays last year, and I said, hey, do we need to keep adding them? And I heard Oscar, actually, I'm thrilled you didn't graduate because I got it wrong, right? I said, hey, do we need to do all of these? And Oscar talked about how his grandmother couldn't believe that we had done it. And for the first time, Oscar, I just told my Jewish friend when Rosh Hashanah was. So that's because of you. So it's important that we listen to our students and parents, and I think we do that in all these different ways. So I'll close by thanking the district for the fact-based approach to working with our kids at an age-appropriate level about all the things that they're going to encounter in this world. And I personally have learned so much, like in that example, about how we could be better and more equitable. And I appreciate you guys letting us parents come along for the ride. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, I'd like to welcome Michael Goodman.
Good evening. My name is Michael Goodman. I'm a resident of the Hopkins School District. All 4 of my children attended public school in Hopkins. My youngest graduated last year. I stand before you tonight because I, like many citizens, parents, and educators, are very concerned about the trajectory of public school education in our community. I'd like to begin by reading a few words from the Minnesota Department of Education website provided by the Hopkins School District. Hopkins High School is Minnesota's first National School of Excellence. We are committed to preparing every student for success in the post-secondary option of his or her choice. Our mission is to ensure all students graduate with the skills necessary for post-secondary success. Our vision is to be a vital community asset focused on citizenship and high academic achievement for all students. We believe in providing a safe environment, high-quality instruction, and meaningful content. We believe diversity strengthens our community and prepares students for positive and productive lives. By utilizing diverse instructional strategies, we believe it increases engagement and student performance. I would like to now present very recent data from above, from the Minnesota Department of Education, which tracks academic proficiency at grade level in school districts across the state. Once the #1 rated high school in Minnesota, Hopkins High School is struggling, and there has been a steady decline for many years. And even though some other districts are having challenges as well, the 2022 numbers at Hopkins are particularly troubling given its past. I'd like to call your attention to the fact that Hopkins High School students are now less than 50% proficient at grade level in math, reading, and science. Furthermore, the issue of declining academic performance is system-wide in the Hopkins School District. The data provided by the Minnesota Department of Education is terrifying and undisputable. I represent a growing group of concerned citizens, parents, and educators that want to know what the school board is doing to correct the downward trajectory of our schools. We are not here as your adversary. The quality of schools in our community is important to everyone, particularly families with kids in K-12 education and homeowners concerned about the damage to market value due to the overall decline in the reputation of our schools. Thank you for the opportunity to speak before you tonight. Our group is growing, and we look forward to hearing what the board's plans are to improve the academic proficiency at each grade level at the coming month's board meetings. We all have a vested interest in our school, in our public school system. Watching it continue to fail is not an option. Thank you again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, I'd like to welcome Andy Kyle to the table.
Hi, thank you all. It's my first time being here. I'm going to set my timer here. My name is Andy Kyle, and I'm a parent of a first grader in the Chinese immersion program. My grandfather was a missionary in Africa. My father was a missionary in Africa. In fact, he's there right now in Rwanda setting up printing systems. And so I, too, often feel the need to preach. One of my small sermons begins by asking, how long do you think the white lines are that are painted in the middle of the freeway? These are the white lines that divide the lanes. Does anybody know how long those lines are? Some people say 3 feet, 5. In actuality, those lines are 10 feet long. They're pretty long. But at the speed we go by them, they seem like small blips. Only when we slow down can we see their true length. We live in a society today that barrages us with an abundance of information. It can be hard to slow down and try to disseminate it all. At this time, I wanted to read the Hopkins mission statement, which is important to me. Hopkins Public Schools serves the community by welcoming all learners, honoring culture, and inspiring remarkable growth and achievement. Our district is a special place and unique in many ways. We are academically focused, but also human-focused. There is no typical Hopkins student, and we value that diversity. We are a blend of faiths, cultures, and backgrounds that form a district of individuals with rich stories. You are welcome at Hopkins. You belong at Hopkins. So I appreciate Hopkins School District for taking on these difficult challenges, and they are many difficult. Humans naturally want to stay comfortable at all costs, but true change requires us to get uncomfortable. Talking about equity can be uncomfortable, but I believe it's worth it, and that's why I'm here tonight. So let's slow down together. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, I'll welcome Andrew Wold.
Chair Westmoreland, Board, thank you for the time. I came here because I wanted to introduce myself. I think I've communicated with many of you online or otherwise. My name's Andrew Wold. I'm a resident of Golden Valley, live in the Meadowbrook, Mapton area, but my son goes to the Juntos program here in first grade. I have two other children who are 4 and 1. I'm an attorney, general counsel at the Minnesota Office of Higher Education. My wife is assistant director of special education at 287. We chose the Hopkins district when we were deciding where we wanted to live because of the academic excellence and diversity that this district offers, which just isn't the case when you look at Edina, Minnetonka. I mean, they're very homogenous generally. And here we still thought we got a great product in a diverse district with a school system that had diversity and equity and inclusion in mind in its programming. I think that opponents of this line of education think that this is an either-or situation, when really it's a both-and. We can have real history taught in classes. We can appreciate different cultures. We can show respect for the LGBTQ+ community, and we can have students excel academically. And we can have all students excel academically. And I think that all students means that every student receives the appropriate tools to succeed, not only regardless of their background, but in ways that help them overcome the barriers that hold certain students back. This addresses the achievement and opportunity gap that I think Dr. Mary Pierre Reed mentioned in her discussion before. There are students here who speak 80 languages. How many of them are ESL students? What sort of barriers are there that are holding them back? And how can we help them, give them an extra step up to be able to compete academically? You know, this is a false dichotomy that's being presented by people who are against this line of education, this line of academic achievement. And I think that that false dichotomy is harmful to communities that have been historically excluded. My children fall into every majority that you could have, and you know, I really want them to grow up in a way that they have respect for people who are not like them, that they have conversations that they're comfortable having uncomfortable conversations, and I think that this is the right district for my family, and it's why we chose it. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, I'll welcome Michelle Kuhl. Good evening.
So I had some prepared comments, and but I thought it might be better to respond to the comments that have been made this evening. My name is Dr. Michelle Kuhl. I am a current parent of a Hopkins High School senior, and also a 5th grader at Glen Lake Elementary. And so while I come to much of this discussion as a parent, I also have a PhD in educational policy and administration, and I am currently the new first ever college and career counselor at Hopkins High School. So I come first to make comments as a parent that I want to say I specifically chose Hopkins High School as a graduate of Eden Prairie High School. The main reason being that I chose the district was because of my very traumatic experiences at Eden Prairie as a BIPOC student who was the only student put on the gifted, AP, talented, whatever term was the term of the time, from the 6th through 12th grade. And the curriculum was not diverse, the staff was not diverse, and the student population was not diverse. And therefore, as a direct result, I was looking for a school district where I could have both academic rigor and inclusive principles. That was Hopkins when it came to public schools. It was the only choice. I bought 3 houses in the district because I refused to leave the district. From a staff member perspective, there are comments tonight about our data from the Minnesota Department of Education. It's true, can't deny it, downward trend. We see it, and I can tell you at the high school level, having been there since February, there is data, and I'm not sure of how that pans out at the elementary and at the junior high levels. But what I can tell you is that the Minnesota Department of Education, while that report card is an important factor, it's not the only measure of academic success for public schools. It is quantitative in nature, and it is a large systematic report card which cannot catch the nuances of what's going on. So at Hopkins High School in the last year, since I've been there, since February, we offered over 900, students took over 900 AP tests. We have many AP courses. You can take a math course all the way up to multivariate calculus, AP Lang and Lit, AP Physics, AP Environmental Science. You can take college in the schools programs. We have an 85% graduation rate. Is there work to do? Absolutely. It's part of the reason I was hired. We're in the midst right now of new PSAT in-school prep testing. In the spring, we will be piloting new ACT in-school test prep for all juniors. I'm currently teaching.
We're at 3 minutes.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
And lastly, I just want to say that there are lots of things going on, and while there should be concerns, there are also many things that people should be informed about as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you to all of our commenters this evening. Really appreciate you being here and taking the time and sitting through the whole meeting and sharing your thoughts with us. So with that, I would look for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
I have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second to adjourn. Any discussion? There never is. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion carries. This meeting of the Hopkins School Board is adjourned at 8:22 p.m.